Hi Vinyl community, John here again. This is to catch up with my heavy metal hard rock records series that I've been doing. It's been a while since I've done one now, so probably going to try and fit in quite a few. I've reached J, and in this video I'll also try and cover K. Now I don't have any other heavy metal records by any bands at the beginning of J other than Judas Priest, of course. So I'm going to go through my Judas Priest vinyl collection. While I do that, we're going to listen to this, the Swedes, Heavy Load, Death for Glory. Okay, so this is the first one by Judas Priest I have, Stained Class. I believe this is their fourth album. I think all the records that I have, at least all the early records I have by them, is on CBS. And they're all fairly early UK pressings. Killing Machine is the first record by them that I had, that I found. I remember distinctly buying this at a jumble sale in Essex, fairly early on. I guess I would say I was about 14 or 15 perhaps when I found this, and you know, I didn't know who these guys were. I didn't really know anything about heavy metal or hard rock or anything like that. I was kind of slightly attracted to this cover. There seemed something kind of sinister about it, and to be honest with you, it frightened me at the same time as sort of excited me. I probably played it and thought, oh good God, no, it sounds like the devil's music, can't possibly listen to that. But I've hung on to it, you know, I've kept it, purely because I assumed that one day I may find it interesting, and lo and behold I did. You know, by the time I was in my late teens, early 20s, I was starting to enjoy this kind of stuff. So it's a good example of, you know, hanging on to records, even if you don't necessarily enjoy them right at that moment, there's a good chance that you may well do come to like them in the future. And that's a brilliant album. It is a really, really good record. Delivering the Goods, Evening Star, and of course the Killing Machine. You know, really, really good track. Unleashed in the East. They're a bit dusty. I haven't really paid as much attention for a while. Yeah, I think I wrote a comment to Cloudy Mulder recently about this being also nicknamed Unleashed in the Studio. I think there's a lot of overdubs on this. I don't know to what extent, but it's a lot less live, let's say, than many other live albums. I'm sure the audience sounds alive. British Steel. This is possibly, in my opinion, their strongest record of the 80s. I mean, they made a lot of really great records, but this for me is very much a very strong record. Yeah, I'm not going to read out the track listing on every record, but it does have a lot of those tracks that I'm sure they include in their live set today. Really great record. Point of Entry. Heading Out on the Highways on this one. Great record, not such great shape. Yeah, and again, dusty. I really should play these again, I guess. I've got two copies of this. Look at this. 2 copies, Screaming for Vengeance. This isn't the better one. Oh, but this is the better one. Although they're both fairly okay. This is a very strong album, and I think it's got, in my opinion, it's got the heaviest track that Judas Priest did up until this point on it. Screaming for Vengeance, I think, I would say, was pretty heavy for their time. In '82 this came out, so I guess thrash was happening. I wonder if they'd had sort of half an ear cocked in that direction. I don't know, but it's a great record, and the live version of Screaming for Vengeance is really, really cool. I've got a CD of Priest live. Love to have that on vinyl, but I don't have it. And then the last one of Judas Priest I've got on vinyl was this, Painkiller. I can remember when this came out. In fact, I bought this brand new from the store. And as you know, there aren't many records that I buy new from the store, but this one is one of them. I bought the CD single of Screaming for Vengeance on the little mini CD thing, and yeah, it was brilliant. It was mind blowing. By this time, I was well into heavy metal, and CBS. So by this time, I was well into heavy metal, and it was kind of exciting to think that Judas Priest were upping their game a bit. Of course, by the 90s, thrash metal perhaps peaked, or at least was peaking, and I think they got a little bit of flack in the press because they were sort of deemed to be cashing in, or jumping on the bandwagon, whatever you want to call it. But I didn't see it like that. I saw it as basically them identifying that the market was expecting something louder and faster and heavier, and a bit more hard-edged than what they've been doing. So they would do, because I mean the albums they did before this, Ram It Down, what was the other one? I can't remember. I'll write it here. I don't know, they were slightly lame. There were 1 or 2 good tracks on those 2 albums, but to be honest with you, there was a lot of filler, and there was a lot of, I don't know, lame attempts to have a hit in the charts, I suppose. But I'd like to think that by the time they'd made this record, they'd realise they're not going to have #1, and they're not going to be on top of the pops anytime soon. So why bother trying? This is a really, really good record, possibly one of my favourite heavy metal records. It's really, really good, and if you haven't got this one, you should check it out, because it's brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to mosey on into K now. Okay, vinyl community, now we're going to go into K, change the record quickly. We're going to listen to Screaming for Vengeance in the next section here. Okay, K, so what have we got to show? Well, first of all, a band that Cloudy Mulder has spoken about recently. This is Kingdom Come. Now, I got the feeling he wasn't a big fan of these. I really liked them. What I liked about Kingdom Come and a lot of the other bands of the time that were doing a similar thing was that they were filling the gap of Led Zeppelin, basically. I mean, Led Zeppelin had finished. People had played their material quite a lot, and you know, why wouldn't they? Led Zeppelin are a brilliant band. It's only one of my favourites. And there was kind of a new interest, if you like, of hard rock music, and Led Zeppelin weren't really having anything to do with it because they were doing their solo projects, and it wasn't particularly rocky either, was it? Let's face it. And so, yeah, it kind of left a hole. I think it left a hole for bands like this to come along and say, well, you know, we'll fill that gap. And I think they did it quite well. This guy here, Lenny Wolf, think they were a German band, weren't they? He sort of made the headlines a little bit with his sort of apparent arrogance, but I think he said afterwards that it come down to his poor English, that he wasn't necessarily so brash, but it was just his command of English made him sound a bit like that. So that was the first album. The second album was a little bit controversial purely because of its name, Kingdom Come in Your Face. Great record, I really like this. In a sleeve, and they were on, that's just regular Polydor. And then I have their third album, Hands of Time. I think my interest in them at this point started to wane a little bit. I don't know what they've done since, to be honest with you. I think I've got 2 copies of this album actually. What's this one? Yeah, on Polydor as well. This came out in '91. Yeah, 1 or 2 good tracks on it, but I guess they're sort of, their edge has sort of worn off a little bit now. What I think is really interesting about this is in the same year, another record came out by another band, Simply Red, and the cover looked remarkably like this. I'll put them next to each other for you to see the similarity. So whenever I'm out record digging, you see that Simply Red record everywhere, and I always think, oh, there's another copy of the Kingdom Come album, but do a double take and it's not. Okay, I'm going to show this as well now. This is another record I have by them. It's a 10-inch EP in red vinyl. What was the track called? Overrated. And I had the B-sides, Perfect O live and The Wind live. Yeah, I think this was probably my first Kingdom Come record, and this is what sort of brought them to my attention. What can I say? Yeah, I've got a few heavy metal EP type things that I haven't been sort of showing regularly, but I guess I'll come back to those later on at the end of the series. Okay, next band is King Kobra. So this is a LA band, and if I understand right, it's basically the band that the drummer, I think his name is Carmine Appice, or however you pronounce that. He'd sort of been playing in Ozzy Osbourne's band, and he was no longer playing in Ozzy Osbourne's band, so he put together his own band. And that became King Kobra. It's also got Johnny Rod, so the guy in the middle. He went on to join Wasp after he'd been in King Kobra for a while. Got a nice little picture there. Not necessarily my favourite type of stuff. I mean, it says what it's done. It does what it says on the tin. It's kind of an LA kind of rock band. This one's still in the seal. This is their second album called Thrill of a Lifetime. You know, I hadn't noticed until I saw this on a little thumbnail on the internet that these lines, they make the female form. You'll be able to see it, but I've never noticed that up until now. So this is still in the shrink. Pretty good condition. What's that on? Yeah, it's just on Capital. A bit dusty. There you go. So, no, not a fantastic band. I mean, what else can I say about them, really? almost like musicians that were kind of stranded in the wilderness because they weren't in some other big name band, so they sort of played together until something else came along. So that's what I feel about that. There's not really an awful lot of substance material there. That's what I feel. So the next record, this is an Australian band called Kings of the Sun. It's their first album. Didn't hear much about these, and I don't know much. I can't really tell you much about them other than they're Australian. It's on RCA. Oh, it's fairly, you know, Australian rock music. You can always tell that it's Australian. There's something about it, isn't there? And this has that quality. Not, yeah, I wouldn't hold them up against AC/DC or anything like that, but a fairly sort of commercial sounding rock band. I'm sure you could find them on YouTube if you looked hard enough. Richie, Kotzen. I thought I'd shown this record before, but I can't see that I have. Fever Dream. Yeah, I've had this for a long time, not known who this guy is. Yeah, it is what you'd expect. It's kind of fairly commercial sounding American rock music. I didn't think he was particularly very good guitarist either. I think he was a bad guitarist, but he's on Roadrunner. I don't know. He doesn't sound like someone that I would consider worthy of their own solo record. So I just recently discovered this. He, after this record, joined Poison. And interestingly, I think he joined Poison after their peak. I think they'd sort of fired CC DeVille and needed a replacement guitarist, and he got the job. He also went on to form a supergroup. What were they called? The Winery Dogs or something like that? I'll write that underneath. Together with Mike Portnoy from Dream Theater, I think, and somebody else from Mr. Big. An unusual mixture. I hadn't heard that record or anything like that, but sounds like an interesting mix of people. I can't really tell you more about him than that. Okay, so now we're up to the last set of records in the K section, and the first one I'm going to show is of that last lot is this one. This is Krokus. Krokus come from Switzerland, and this was their breakthrough record. Metal Rendez-vous it's called. Now, since I've bought this record, I'll write here when I bought it because it'll be on my database. I've often thought, like, why isn't this record better known? It's a really, really good record. It's a real classic heavy metal record, I think. I read on Wikipedia that it was kind of a big seller, as it was the record that broke them in America. But I don't really hear much about it. I mean, the songs, they're all really sort of good, really, really good, catchy, heavy metal songs. Excellent material, really excellent album. And I'm just surprised that, you know, I would compare it with, for instance, yeah, Judas Priest-Painkiller, for instance, or Saxon's Power and the Glory. You know, it's sort of it's a really great record. I don't know how you pronounce the name of that label, but that's what they're on. So if you haven't heard this one, check it out. It's definitely a really, really good heavy metal record from around about that time when it was released. 79, I think it says here. The next one is the follow-up album they did. Hardware. I haven't listened to this one quite as much, surprisingly. And it's a really thick album cover, generic in a sleeve. It's on Arista. Yeah, it's pretty much more of the same. It's probably why I haven't really played it much, because well, quite like the first one. I kind of like to go back to that one. I probably should invest more time into listening. And then the last record of the K's that I've got to show is this one, also by Krokus. This is their third album. No, the fourth album, sorry. It's the fourth album, I think. Could be wrong. Called The Blitz. And if I'm honest, I'll tell you I haven't even listened to this one since I got it. Because I think I probably picked this up after I sort of stopped playing heavy metal records. It's also on Arista. Quite a nice label, that is. So I can't really tell you much more about it than that, other than that they're a great band, and if I was to kind of be interested in sort of ducking my head back into heavy metal again, I would probably seek this out and see if it's as good as the first one of theirs that I showed. Okay, so that's what I've got to show from the K's. Thanks very much for watching. It's been a while since I did one of these, so I'll try and get another one done soon. What will be K? We'll be on to L next. So thanks very much for watching, and look out for my next video. Thanks, bye.